Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let me show you how you can break out of the Apple ecosystem while still using your Mac, iPhone, and iPad. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about it, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So I've often heard it said that Apple's like a walled garden. As soon as you start using Apple products, you're stuck inside using all of the different Apple services. But in fact, Apple's actually really good at letting you use just about any service you want for anything. You don't have to use Apple stuff just because you use Apple's hardware. So for instance, a lot of people think that once you move to Apple products, you need to use Pages, Numbers, and Keynote, and you can no longer access Microsoft Office products like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. But that's just not true. Microsoft has always made versions of these apps for Mac. And you can actually get them right in the App Store on your Mac. You can just download all of these versions here. You'll need a subscription from Microsoft to use them though. But you actually can buy that not just as a subscription, but you could also buy a standalone version of the Office products as well if you really want that. Although for personal use, a subscription is probably the way to go because you can use those App Store versions of the apps and it ends up being cheaper if you're assuming that there are major updates to the software every 2 years or so. But that's not the only set of Office applications you can use. There are many more, some available in the App Store and others available from the web. For instance, LibreOffice is a very popular cross-platform Office suite that you can use, and it can even open and save out Microsoft formatted documents. In addition, a lot of people skip having apps for this at all and use Google Docs, the website that Google provides for free that you can use as a word processor, spreadsheets, forms, all sorts of different things. I know using Google Docs is very popular, especially for students. Now I'm a huge fan of the Photos app on the Mac, and I've done tons of tutorials on it. And I think people that don't use it today are still thinking of how Photos was maybe many years ago before it added a lot of the powerful features it has now. But if you really want to use some other ecosystem besides Apple's Photos app and iCloud Photos library, you certainly can. Matter of fact, you can get Adobe Lightroom, a popular choice, right from the App Store. And then you can get a subscription for that from Adobe. You can also use lots of different online photo storing services, like for instance, Google Photos. Now, as far as email is concerned, you don't have to use iCloud just because you're using an Apple product and the Apple Mail app. In fact, if you just go to Mail, Settings, and then Accounts, you see that you can add a new account and it has built-in quick ways to add Microsoft Exchange accounts, Google accounts, also known as Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, or you can choose another mail account. And here's where you can add an account from just about anything. Your school, your company, your ISP, any standard email account will work with the Mail app. And you can also have more than one account here. So you can still use your iCloud account for some things, even if your main account is with your school or company. In addition, you don't even have to use the Apple Mail app. You can get different mail clients both on the Mac and in iOS and iPadOS. For instance, the Spark Mail app is a really popular one. One you can download online is Thunderbird. Thunderbird's been around for a long time and it's a pretty comprehensive email app. And you can also, of course, just use web-based interfaces for doing email. A lot of people just use Google's Gmail website for checking their Gmail and never use an email client at all. I note that some of these services offer more than just mail. For instance, in System Settings, if I go to Internet Accounts, I could see I've got some demo Google accounts here. If I go into them, I can see that Google offers not just mail, but contacts, calendars, and notes. And these will work with these apps on your Mac directly. Now, they may not have as many features. For instance, in Notes, you're not going to get a lot of the new iCloud stuff. But you can still use Notes and store basic text notes that are actually put in Google's ecosystem, not Apple's. And a lot of other email services also offer these. Now, you also don't have to stick with the Safari browser on your Apple products. Safari is great because it syncs up things like bookmarks between all your devices, but so do other browsers as well. So for instance, you could get Google's Chrome browser and you can use your Google account to sync things up. Firefox is another popular browser and that also has a service to sync your bookmarks between different devices. A newer browser you can get for your Mac that a lot of people also like is Microsoft Edge. So that would of course work with the Microsoft ecosystem. Now one of the things that's built into macOS, iOS, and iPadOS is the iCloud keychain, allowing you to store your passwords, create unique, strong passwords for different websites. But you could certainly use another password manager. A lot of those have been around a lot longer than Apple's own password manager. For instance, 1Password has been around on the Mac for a long time, and the great thing about it and other password managers is they work cross-platform. So if you do happen to have a non-Apple device, it's just as easy to install this app on all your devices and sync your passwords between them. Another popular one will be Bitwarden too, and you can get apps for 1Password and Bitwarden that work across all your devices. Let's talk about cloud services, particularly storing your files in a cloud service like iCloud Drive. You don't have to use iCloud Drive just because you're using a Mac, iPhone, or iPad. You can use lots of third-party apps. For instance, Dropbox has been around for a long time, and you could certainly use Dropbox not just on the web but also by installing apps on your devices, and then you automatically have access to those files in folders just like you would iCloud Drive. Matter of fact, the Files app on the iPhone and the iPad work with Dropbox and other cloud services, so you can see those services listed there just as easily as you see iCloud Drive. Another popular one, of course, is Google Drive. And that works really well if you're already using the Google ecosystem. And that's not all. You can use alternative apps for just about anything on your Mac. For instance, if you don't like the Podcast app on your Mac or your iPhone or iPad, you can find other podcast apps on all of those devices, usually in the Mac App Store, and you can subscribe to your podcast through those. The same is true with music apps. There are plenty of media handling apps and music players, and if you use streaming music, you can certainly get apps like Spotify and use that service instead. There's also, of course, YouTube Music and Amazon Music. So there are a ton of different ways to stream music. You don't have to stick with Apple's service. And you don't necessarily need to stick with Siri as your digital assistant either. Though Siri works great across all the Apple platforms, on the iPhone and iPad in particular, you can get apps for Google Assistant and for Amazon Alexa and access those as well. So that's really handy if you've got devices around your house for those or devices that respond to those systems. You can use those apps on your iPhone to control them or to do things like add reminders and events and perform other tasks in those different ecosystems. So while I personally prefer using the Apple apps for just about everything we talked about, it is great to know that you have alternatives in just about every way. So if you have a lot of devices and only some of them are Apple devices, then using some of these other ecosystems may make sense. Or you may just have historically used things like Google Drive, Microsoft Office, and so on and just want to stick with those. Or maybe your coworkers use those and you really want to stick with those for compatibility. I hope you found this useful, particularly if you're looking to switch to the Mac and you had questions about all of this. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.